Welcome to Real Talk with Reginald D. I'm your host, Reginald D. On today's episode, I have Phebe Trotman. Phebe is a successful entrepreneur, an author, and an accomplished athlete. Welcome to the show, Phebe.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Phebe, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and where you grew up?
Absolutely. So I grew up and I actually still live in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And my parents, though, are originally from Barbados. So I like to say I had like a Canadian upbringing with a lot of spice and flair with my parents. And just, overall, I had a great childhood. My parents, very loving home, very spiritual home, very grounded home. I have an older brother. And yeah, I mean, it's funny because when I sit and think back, I'm so grateful for the childhood that I had. I mean, I definitely had challenges growing up in Vancouver. There were not back then, a lot of kids that looked like me in my school. So there were, moments of bullying and moments of, not feeling welcomed or included. That being said, my parents being my parents, they always did just remind us to focus on what is going well in our life and to be, focus on being around people who do want us to be there. And so it was a lot of fun, a lot of sports in our home, a lot of games and good times all around.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, Phoebe, you've had such a powerful journey from championship soccer player to an entrepreneur and now an author. Take us back to the beginning. Who was Phoebe before all the titles and success?
Phoebe was a young lady looking to figure herself out. I think, it's been definitely a journey as you share. Like I've had different chapters, I like to say, in my life. And I think with every chapter, I'm evolving. I am definitely a person who wants to excel in the best way that I can for myself in terms of whatever that looks like. And so it has taken a lot of twists and turns. And, in every season, there's been a lot of moments of challenge, a lot of moments of disappointment, of frustration. And I think the theme throughout all of it, which is what led me into being an author and the route that I've taken as an author is just to keep going and never quitting, even when there are those moments of challenge and frustration and loss and disappointment and all the feelings that we go through. I do believe I just kept showing up. And that's kind of how I've ended up where I am today.
So, how did you get into soccer?
So I started playing soccer when I was 5 because my older brother played. So somehow my brother got involved in the sport and I was like the little sister always getting tagged along to his games. And so I think finally I must have just said to my parents like, hey, I want to play too. And my first team that I played on was actually an all boys team. So I was the only little girl on this boys team. I was the only person of color on this boys team. But it was great because we just played soccer and I loved to play, and definitely having an older brother and older cousins who I always played with, I was fine being around the boys, and it didn't bother me. And they I think because I was into the sport, they were fine with me being on the team. And so eventually I transitioned to a girls team.
Right, right. As long as you produce them, they're good, right?
Pretty much, exactly.
So you've been inducted into multiple sports Hall of Fame. What do you think those early years in sports taught you about faith, perseverance, and leadership?
Yeah. And I mean, I'm so grateful for the inductions into the Sports Hall of Fames and in different capacities as an athlete as well as a team. And again, one of the biggest things that sports has taught me is really just to keep going. Like when you're playing a sport, especially a team sport, there's going to be moments of, again, super high highs where you're winning championships. However, I always say those only come because of all the losses, the games that didn't go as planned, the sitting on the bench and not being able to play, and really always having to continue to work hard and just believe. And I encourage people, just to have that goal and continue to work towards it, because even it's that pursuit of that ultimate goal, the person that you grow into is really truly who you're supposed to be. And so having the faith to keep going, even when, again, games didn't go the way I wanted to, or not getting the playing time, or not even making a team. I talk about it in one of my books about, such a pivotal moment in my career as an athlete. And that's when I got cut from a team that it blew me away, because I didn't think I thought I would have been making that team. And so it was a really tough moment. However, my parents really just kind of refocus me on, well, okay, decisions done, what can you control? And really going to that tough love lesson that I definitely didn't want to hear at the moment. That being said, years later, I'm grateful that they sat me down and had that conversation and helped me refocus on what was in my control as an athlete, as a person, and to focus on that.
Yeah, well put. Because I remember back in, I think it was high school, I went out for the basketball team because used to love playing basketball. And we had one coach that was leaving, then our other coach, he took over, but he was actually an English teacher also in the school. And I got cut doing trials. And all the guys was like, how you cut him? Because they know me from playing basketball in the playgrounds and everything. He said, this guy can shoot from anywhere. He can do this because I was shooting guard. And make a long story short, I was in his English class one day and they had started the season and they were losing. And and then one of the guys said, Coach, man, when are you going to win the game? He said, man, I messed up. I should have never cut that guy right there, talking about me. And then after that, I transferred to another school because we moved. And then I met up with him. I got on that team and I met up with him. It was bad that night. it was was bad. Yeah, yeah. I gave, I had prepared. I said, no. I'm gonna make him miss, what he thought he had or what he lost. And after the game, I looked at him. I said, hey, coach, I said, do you wish you would have cut me now? And he kind of dropped his head and he kind of shook his head and things like that. And he said, man, I got to go in here and encourage this young man that you pose your will on, the guy who was guarding me. I kind of felt bad for the kid, man, but I think I did. But,
yeah. But what a powerful lesson right there of like perseverance, because, I coach soccer now, and there's one of the things that I think is just so unfortunate is when a situation like that happens where a player might not make a team, that they quit the sport. Because it's like, that's one coach, right? Like with your example in your story, that's one coach who had made a decision. It didn't stop you. You kept going and you had that moment of like, I'm going to show them, in a way where you put in the work and you let your performance speak volumes. And I think that's such a powerful lesson for all of us to take. Even when things don't go necessarily the way you want, it doesn't mean you're done right then. As long as you keep going and you keep showing up, you will get that opportunity again.
Yeah. And that's a part of life. I tell people it's all a part of life when it's all said and done. So you ought to talk about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Can you share a moment when that mindset truly changed the course of your life?
Just one? Oh, wow. I mean, it's now like kind of how I live, is just putting myself in those kind of uncomfortable situations, because you just never know where that can lead. To think of like one specific example, I mean, I'm consistently looking for situations. One of the things that I did a couple years ago now, but I had always like kind of loved the idea of being able to dance. I'm athlete through and through. I remember when I was a young kid, my mom wanted to put me in ballet and I cried. I was like, absolutely not. I'm a soccer player. And so what I decided to do was I signed up for salsa lessons, and zero background in dance other than, going out with friends and whatnot. And it was uncomfortable because I was nervous. I was not good. It stretched me in so many ways. I met so many incredible people might not have ever met had I not signed up for salsa lessons. And it turned out I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I say loved right now because I stopped going because I was dealing with a shoulder injury for a long time recovering, and now a hip injury. So it is something that I would love to get back to, and I'm excited to get back to. And I share that because it wasn't comfortable. It was very uncomfortable going to something that and learning a new skill, if you will, all over again. And that, but there's so much beauty in that because, with soccer, I've played for so many years that it's what I do. It's what I know. I love it. However, I'm not being consistently challenged or stretched from a mental capacity, because it is something that for me right now, it's habitual. And so when we can put ourselves in those uncomfortable situations, and I want to stress that uncomfortable is up to each person to determine what is uncomfortable for them. Someone listening right now or watching might be like, salsa dancing was uncomfortable for you. Yes, it was. However, so again, it's whatever is going to stretch you, because one of my favorite quotes is life begins at the edge of your comfort zone by Neil Donald Walsh. And that is stretching yourself. Your comfort zone is what we consider to be comfortable. However, when we start stretching that and expanding that, which will be uncomfortable at first, our comfort zone expands. hands. And there's so much beauty in that. And I'm grateful that I have kind of adopted this philosophy of getting comfortable being uncomfortable, because it's led to beautiful moments. A new hobby that I love to do in terms of salsa dancing, and so many events that I've gone to where I wasn't comfortable going, yet it turned out to be such a big blessing in terms of the people I've met, the opportunities that has allowed me to do. And even just asking questions sometimes can be uncomfortable, yet when you ask, you also can receive.
Yes, exactly. And that's all the part about growing. I mean, you got to make yourself uncomfortable in order to grow.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned the importance of being open about your struggles. What do you think transparency about pain and failure, why do you think it's so vital for personal growth?
I think when we share our struggles, it allows other people, one, to see that we're human. I think so many times people have this idea, myself included, where, you think that someone's had kind of, you see their successes and you're just like, oh, well, it must have been easy for them, versus going like, oh, you know what? They've probably gone through some stuff too. Even if it wasn't stuff in terms of business stuff, then personal stuff or relational stuff. Like there's it's life where, there are going to be those challenges and struggles. And I think when we can be transparent about them, it allows other people to see like, hey, you can still have challenges and you can still keep going. You can still find things to be grateful for. You can still show up with a smile, even when you're going through tough stuff. It doesn't minimize what you're going through. It just means you're choosing to also find good in other areas of your life as well. And so one of the things that I do think is important is to let people know, and be open again within reason, and the people that you feel safe with and that you trust, that you can have a conversation with, because oftentimes people, when we start sharing from a vulnerable place and sharing some of the things that we go through, it allows them to feel safe enough to also do the same as well. And so it can really strengthen relationships when we take a moment and kind of let down our guard, let down that everything is perfect, kind of persona, if you will, and just speak from a place of truth and honesty. And that's a lot of times where connection really can build from.
Yes. So let me talk about this, because I'm pretty sure you experienced it. Two things, self-doubt and burnout. So I think many of my listeners are battling with self-doubt and burnout. What's your go-to strategy when life feels overwhelming?
Whew. Well, a big piece of it would be like faith, right? Praying for me helps me to just kind of ground myself and knowing that there is a plan for my life, and kind of releasing that need to really control everything has been huge for me. And that is something I'm continuing to work on. It is definitely a process. Self-doubt, I believe, most people will go through moments of self-doubt. I go through moments of self-doubt. Even becoming an author, writing a book, there were moments of like, really? Am I going to write a book? Where I just kind of questioned it. Well, a couple of things that I like to do is, one, I like to look back at past successes. And past challenges. I do both. The reason I do both is past challenges to say like, okay, I've created success in other areas of my life. I can create success in this new area. And past challenges as well, to go, wait a second. I had challenges in my life and I've made it through. I can make it through this one as well too. So looking at both of those as evidence that we can continue to learn, we can continue to grow. There are people out there who can help us. I'll use the example of when I published the first book, is relying on other people who have gone through it. So using them as examples and references to learn, having a support team to work through releasing this book together, knowing that this is a new lane for me. It's a new chapter. And so who can I reach out to who has gone through this publishing process, who is someone in the writing world, if you will, to help me through it as well. And so when someone's struggling with self-doubt, I do recommend look at your past successes, look at your past challenges, and realize that you can continue to grow, and find people who have done it that you can use as a reference point as well too, because everybody's starting, everyone's learning something at some point. And so you're not going to be the first person to enter into a world where you might feel self-doubt in a certain capacity, and you won't be the last. So who can you look to kind of speak some life into you as well? And the same thing with overwhelm and burnout, which is just, it's so sad to see how many people are going through that. I think a big piece is figuring out what ultimately are your priorities and making sure you make time for your priorities, including your own self-care. whatever that looks like. And so for each person, I just encourage to figure out what brings you joy and make a list of it. I call it my joy list, where you have a list of all the things that you love to do, because then you can be intentional about making sure you have time for that, which will help with that feeling of burnout, because then you're doing things that you love to recharge you to deal with some of the other things that might be creating a little bit of that burnout and overwhelm.
Yes, and think about it, you hit it right on the head. You're talking about prioritizing. You got to have priorities and prioritize you, in your life instead of just trying to prioritize life as a whole. You got to start with you when it's all said and done. That helps with, being overwhelmed and things like that. So,
one other thing I just thought of too that I'd like to add is going back to focusing on what you can control. I know in seasons and moments where I felt very overwhelmed or felt just like I wasn't sure what to do and where to go and what to turn. It was just a lot, is focusing, really reminding myself, okay, what is within my control in this moment, in this season, in this situation? What is ultimately in my control? And even sometimes I take it as far as writing pen to paper, right? What is in my control? Okay, well, my attitude's in control. My perspective is in my control. The things that I can control, my own actions out of this situation. And then really focusing on that, because also sometimes we get overwhelmed because we're focusing on other things which really aren't even in our control. So if we can revisit what is in our control and start from there, that also can help too.
yeah. And one of the key words you said, and I always teach this to people, is the moment. How you handle your moment will determine your purpose and your destiny's outcome, when it's all said and done. But you got to handle each moment the best way you can, good or bad, you know. So now you're a very impactful person, but you said success is about impact, not just income. Can you expand on that philosophy?
Yes. So I believe that I encourage people to figure out, what does success look like for you? I really, truly believe it's such an important exercise for each person to really take some time and go, well, what does living a successful life mean to me, Phebe Trotman? Your version of success, Reginald, is going to be different than mine, and the next person and the next person. And I believe that when we can figure out what does success look like for us and work towards living that life or being in that life, continue to grow it and expand on that, that's where we can have the ultimate impact. Oftentimes I feel like, and myself included, I got caught up in this: success meant a certain amount of money, driving a certain car, certain house, certain vacations, et cetera, and working towards that and getting in this, where that created overwhelm because I kept just going and going and going to have these things, if you will. And when I took a step back, and most of this happened really and truly when I was helping with, my dad had been diagnosed with cancer, and I'm so grateful I had the time to be able to be with him and help with him. And I realized, like, what is really important to me is time with my loved ones, times with my friends and family, enjoying and making moments and memories that I can forever hold and cherish. That to me is ultimately part of my definition of success. And so when I was able to have that time and looking back on that time, I'm grateful for it because I was able to be present. And so that's where I just feel, especially in terms of impact, because when you are feeling that you're living in your purpose, living in your destiny, living in your calling, living in those moments, that's where you can have the most impact on the people around you. Again, I think oftentimes people think, oh, I have to impact the world. And it's like, impact the world of what you live with right now. Start there and then move out from that place. And so I've been able to create a life that I'm so thankful for, where I've had the impact within my network and my friends and family, because I have been able to create a successful life in those moments with having the time with my friends and family.
Yeah, I tell you what, man, family is everything. As I've grown through life and chased things and did a lot of stuff trying to be quote unquote successful. Now I'm like, man, family first, family over everything, and then, like you said, reaching the people, being an impact of the people that's around you, that's around you. Because here's the thing, I always believe that, and I was told this actually, said God has a set amount of people that's sitting there waiting on you.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, you ain't got to take over the whole world. You ain't got to do all that. There is a set amount of people somewhere that's just waiting on you when it's all said and done. So let's talk about your new book series, Never Quit on a Bad Day. What inspired you to write it, Phoebe?
Really, all the stuff we've been talking about is what came down. I mean, I had some great friends who were chatting and about like what's next. And I had shared that it had been on my heart for several years to create something to help people, to encourage people, to inspire people. I wasn't sure what that was going to look like. And they're the ones actually who suggested write a book. And right away, I chuckled a little bit because I've had people in the past who have said, "Hey, you should write a book." And I was like, I'm good. And I think part of that was a little bit of that self-doubt of like, well, writing, I don't know. Like, what am I going to say? All the stuff, the chatter. However, what they did, which I'm so grateful, they kind of flipped it and said, it wasn't about me. It's about the people that book could help. And because the month before I had been inducted into the Coquitlam Sports Hall of Fame and we had this whole ceremony, and in it, one of the interviewer, he asked me, what has sport given me? And I shared a lot of the lessons, just like we've talked about here. And I shared how a lot of the lessons came through the challenges that I faced in sport. And so when I was simmering on the book idea, that's when I realized that's what I wanted to share, was the story behind the story, how our struggles can lead to our setups, and just to allow people into a glimpse into someone else's life on some of the challenges that they've had so that they also know they're not alone. And more importantly, though, give them ideas, strategies, tips, perspectives that they might be able to apply to their own life. So when they're facing struggles, they'll be able to kind of move through those with a different lens, if you will. And so it's been incredible. I mean, and then the saying, never quit on a bad day, because it sums it up. We're all going to have those bad days. And typically we end up quitting something when it is a bad day, when we're going through all the negative emotions. And what I want to encourage people to do is to flip that. What can you learn during that bad day? And then if you are going to quit something, quit it on a good day, transition into something else, and make that decision when you're coming from more of a place of peace or a place of you're looking forward to something else versus you're quitting something because of the negative emotions.
It's the reverse effect. A lot of people, we do it one way. If you just reverse it, it shows you a whole other way of doing things, or a whole other way of thinking about things.
Absolutely. And we can find a lesson even in the bad days. And it's interesting because I use bad and I can say, that's again perspective. So for what another person might think of bad, another person might be like, oh, that's not that, again, because of your comfort zone, because of your frame of reference, because you're looking for the lesson in the mess or however you want to look at it. And so we get to choose the label of something that is bad. We get to choose that.
Exactly. So how has writing this book, Phoebe, changed you spiritually, emotionally, and personally?
It's so interesting because if I think back like to 5 years ago, if someone said, "Hey, you'd be talking with Reginald and you'd have a book series," I would have been like, "Yeah, possible," because I believe anything is possible. However, I would have been like, probably not probable. So it has changed me in a lot of ways in the sense of I do believe when there is a calling on our heart to do something, when we can start taking those intentional steps forward, it's so beautiful how our life can evolve and grow. And so when I first, started Never Quit on a Bad Day, the book series, initially it was going to be one book, and then it kind of evolved into more than one book. And then initially it was kind of just like a one-off project. I was like, okay, I'll just, write a book and get it out there. And then it's led to so many opportunities in terms of like speaking and workshops. And I've grown tremendously as a person. The saying, never quit on a bad day, carried me through a lot of very, very challenging times. The last couple of years, actually dealing with my mom and in my mom's passing and having to navigate through that, because there have been some very, very, very bad days that I don't want to do it, feeling uninspired. And then going back to the book and the book series and the lessons and all the things that I've learned throughout the series, going, okay, perspective. What can I find to be grateful for in this tough moment? This, and then moving through that. So I've grown tremendously as a person in terms of spiritually, absolutely, in terms of just, again, taking that time and just to find things to be grateful for, even in, again, the most challenging days. There's always something you can hold on to. And because of writing these books and going through this series and hearing stories from other people, I've been able to grow in terms of being able to find additional strength to kind of navigate this next season in terms of my life too.
Yes, because here's the thing, and it's been not say weird. I just think if people listen and just hear. There's a sound in the atmosphere that I don't care who I talk to or what I listen to or whatever, everybody is shifting towards purpose. Happiness, not about, careers and all this other stuff. I mean, everybody is saying this is the thing. This is what you need to do to make yourself happy. You need to pursue what makes you happy. You need to pursue the purpose that you have in your life. And it's amazing that you did that because I'm telling you, I've heard this for the last, I think, 3 months, just from here to there. I'm like, wow, God, just where we at right now, right? So, it's amazing. And when you're in your own authentic self, it's nothing better.
Absolutely. And you want to go back to, you asked about impact. Well, I just sit and think about what if everybody just lived in their purpose, like how different the world would be, how much impact, because we're all called to different things to serve different people in different environments. And if we were all able to walk in that, I just think of what a ripple effect it would have on other people to also live in their truth and find their passion, and just how we would serve the world in such an incredible way. It would be absolutely beautiful. And I know for some people, it's going to be a transition, right? You might have a job where you're not feeling completely fulfilled, and that's okay. Do that job to the best of your abilities and find something that you can do on the side that you feel fulfilled. And it might not be in terms of a side hustle. It might not be for income. It might be simply for impact. And then you have your job to provide the income to continue to fuel, to do the things that you love to do. But it's so important. That's why I stress that joy list. And it sounds so trivial and so small. However, it's in the intentional things, the intentional small things that when we continually to do will transform our lives.
Yeah. And the thing about it, you just have to have the faith to, sometimes the biggest thing is to start over in life.
Mm-hmm.
People, have setbacks and things like that, start over and try to walk into who they really are and what God has called them to be and their purpose in life. So what's the first step someone should take when they feel stuck or afraid to start over?
I encourage someone to take a pause. This was an activity that I did many, many years ago, and I continually do it. And it's called my dream day. And one of the things with it is to just, and I'll give the short version. I do have like a workbook that goes through in more detail. However, I'll just give the kind of brief version right now so that anyone can do it. Is you just, number one, you got to get in a quiet place, quiet place where it's just you have a journal or pad and paper, a pen, and just take a moment. First, I would encourage, write down 10 to 25 things you're grateful for right now. Whatever it is that in this season that you're grateful for. It can be the fact that you're able to sit in a quiet place. It can be that you're breathing, you're healthy, you had a cup of coffee in the morning or tea, whatever it is, but just 10 to 25 things. The reason being is gratitude will be the foundation where your dreams will be able to grow from. So it's important to be grateful for what we have right in this moment, which will warm up our heart, our brain, our creativity to build from there. And basically the dream day activity is, what does your dream day look like for you? So from the moment you open your eyes to the moment you close them on that day, what does it look like? When you wake up, what do you see around you? Who do you see? What do you do during this dream day? How do you feel physically, emotionally, spiritually? What does your bank account look like? What do you do for work or impact or fun? And just go through that day. What does that look like? And the reason, I was saying, write it with feeling as if you're living it. So actually take a moment and think, what does it feel like when you wake up and you look around and you're just like, this is my home that I built with my family, or whatever it looks like. Write it all down. The reason I circle back to that, to touch back to your original question, is if you're feeling stuck, part of it is to find some clarity. What do you want your life to look like? Because when we can have clarity of what we want to create, now we can start taking some intentional steps to move towards it. If we don't know what we want to create, it's very challenging because we'll be pulled in all sorts of directions because we don't know where we're actually going to. So taking a moment to do the dream day, well, starting with gratitude. What are you grateful for right now? That will also shift your perspective in terms of that feeling stuck. What are you grateful for that you have right now? And then taking a moment to think forward. Well, what do you want your life ultimately to look like? And then once you have that clear picture, what's one thing that you can start this week that will intentionally start moving you towards living that dream day?
Man, that's an amazing breakdown. If you can't take that and do something with something wrong.
Yes. It's again, it's going to sound very like, well, you don't know what I'm going through right now. No, I definitely don't. And trust me, we're all going through. I remember the first time I did this activity. Well, I've done it in two ways. The first time I did, I was laid off and I was literally like, I don't know. What do I want to do? And I was able to take a moment to breathe and just go, okay, what do I want my life to, what is important to me? That's where I realized friends and family. That's where having the time with my friends and family. I like to be able to travel. And so I was able to have a look at what I wanted in the future. And then I made a decision from there what to do next, which was focusing on my business. And so I've done it in that way, which was more of a loose kind of way of doing it. And then now I've taken it a step further where the first time I did that activity, I wasn't in a good place financially at all. My business wasn't going the way I wanted it to. I had credit card debt. I wasn't building a business. Like I was kind of all over the place with my schedule in terms of what I was doing. And it was challenging. It was very challenging. So I understand the person who's listening going, I don't even know where I understand because that's where I was as well too. That being said, I put on that hat and I went, okay, well, if I could, and it was a stretch. And trust me, my first dream day wasn't anything like over the top. It was just where I was at then. However, I've seen how I've been able to live moments of my dream day. And every time I do this activity again, I've lived part of it. And now I stretch again and I do it again, dreaming even bigger. And it's so incredibly, it's just that feeling when you get to experience a part of it, knowing that you had this in your mind and started taking steps forward. And now you're living part of it. It is so rewarding and fulfilling. So that's why I just encourage everyone to do it.
So Phoebe, so basically what you're saying is that you worked hard, stayed positive, and made it happen.
I did. You
All right.
checking out this sign?
Yep,
Pretty
that's
much.
it.
Pretty
That's
much.
it. So Phoebe, you said your goal is to help others discover their joy. What does joy mean to you now beyond success and achievement?
Joy means being able to have a positive impact on someone else's life. So for me now, I mean, joy, I'm also rediscovering it as I shared, my mom passed last year and it's been figuring out again, what does that look like? Because it looks different than how it did before that. So for me personally, in terms of, finding my own joy, that's what I'm discovering all the time. And a lot of that does circle around being with my partner and friends and family and just having that time to be with them. And in terms of helping other people discover their joy, it's figuring out, just really helping people realize what's possible, helping people stay positive even when things are really challenging, because that was something that I realized, going through this last season with my mom, I had a choice on how I showed up. Even though it was very hard at home, I still could choose to find things to smile about. And so in that, I think there were many people that I interact with who it impacted them because they were like, they knew what I was going through in terms of some of the challenges, and they still saw how I kept showing up. And that definitely did impact them as well, too. And so that yeah, just figuring out how to help more people find something to smile about, even when they might be going through something challenging.
Yes, that's amazing. So what's next for you, Phoebe? How do you hope your story continues to inspire others around the world?
So I'm working on another book that I'm very, very excited about. It's actually finished. We're in the design phase. So that will be coming soon in 2026. And this new one, I'm very excited about it because it gives people practical activities that they can implement into their life to get comfortable being uncomfortable, to expand their comfort zone, to experience more joy and happiness, to find more peace, to really just transform your life. All things that I've gone through and grown through and experienced throughout my life. And so I'm excited to be able to put it in a way that someone else can take that and start to implement some of them, whatever connects with them, to transform their life in a positive way as well, too. So that is what I'm working on right now and I'm very, very excited about. And then just continuing to do workshops. I've been doing a lot of workshops in terms of like online workshop for vision boarding. So looking forward to doing that. That's been in a private community and I'm looking forward to sharing that with more people again, because being intentional, there's so much power behind it and really helping people create a vision board that works for them, that helps helps them take action and also attraction. So lots of projects that I'm working on that I'm just I'm looking forward to sharing it with more people, and then just continuing to support and help people along their own journey in whatever capacity that I can.
That's awesome. So, I mean, you have an incredible heart,
Thank
and
you.
you have a sweet spirit about yourself. So I
Thank
want to
you.
ask you a question. When you was on the soccer field, was you that kind to people or were you relentless?
You know what's so funny? I had where you were going with it, and then I was like, I hope he doesn't bring it back to soccer. No, absolutely not. Anyone who's listening to this, and if we played against each other, okay, well, actually, let's say this: my teammates would absolutely be like, actually, not even my. Yes, I do have a sweet spirit. However, when I'm on the soccer field, I am a competitor. I enjoy winning and I'm going to work hard. And I also, with my teammates all know I love them and I'm going to challenge them to be the best that they can be in a lovingly way that might come off very intense at the moment with a smile, though, afterward.
Right. So, so basically what you're saying, you're giving them the business.
When that first whistle go, it's on. Let's go. Let's go. So.
Right. So lastly, Phoebe, how can my listeners connect with you on social media and purchase your books?
Yeah, so my books are available on Amazon or any major online retailer, so you can check it out. Again, super easy to remember. Never quit on a bad day. That's how you can find me on social media. That's how you can find my website. And I want to encourage listeners to go to my website. You can get a free chapter from one of the books. And so it's really just there to help encourage you and inspire you. And then share it with others. Share the lessons that you learn and implement the lessons that you learn from the books, and just continue to keep going forward. I'd love to hear how Never Quit on a Bad Day, how the saying, the books, the podcast, how it has helped you through a challenging time, and what you do to go through challenging times too.
Outstanding. Phebe Trotman, everybody. I have had a blast.
Me too. Thank you so much, Reginald. These are great questions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
All right. Thanks for listening to Real Talk with Reginald D. If you enjoy listening to Real Talk with Reginald D, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts. See you next time.